Hello there. I thought I'd just say I have a new phone, so this video is going to be a lot longer because I have more gigabytes to film and the quality and everything is probably going up. My bank account wasn't too happy when I purchased this new phone, but do you know what? It is what it is. And I am going to be filming with the support of my water in my Nuggy water bottle and wine gums. So if you find it annoying when I'm chewing, I apologise, but I really don't give a shit. So the whole topic of this one is going to be a lot of people they have a lot of misinterpretations about my personality. Especially people who knew me years ago, right? Because I have this whole thing. I'm emotionally unavailable as shit. You already know that. That should be very obvious, right? But I used to be even more emotionally unavailable years ago. And I was so emotionally unavailable and I had so many trust issues. I didn't even like if someone knew my birthday. I had this whole thing where I absolutely hated my birthday, you know? And not a lot of people know the family I belong to. Well, a lot of people know the family that on my dad's side, right? My mum's side, not really, but I kind of like, I never really brought up my parents. You know, I would like, if you'd ask me who my parents were, I'd be like, you know, probably a whole thing like that. But you know what? I never even gave people the opportunity to really ask that question. You know, I feel like a lot of the people I had conversations with, I learned like borderline everything about them, but they kind of knew nothing about me. It was the type of thing where it's like, they'd be like, oh, hi, Nisha. Oh my God, my parents this. Oh my God, like my dog died when I was like 7 and that's really affected me and all. I just feel like I'm slagging people now. I'm not. That was just a fucking made up scenario or whatever. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's so sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. And then I'd be like, oh yeah, but like, what are you doing today? And I would just, I'm just swiping people's messages out the way, sorry. And whenever the whole topic of me came up, it was like this thing where I was like, I'd give them the most vague information possible. Oh, like, oh, Nisha, what did you do with your day? And I'd be like, oh, I went to school, and do you know what? Oh, I fucking hate geography. And yeah, I'm very tired. And do you know what? Someone could ask me how I am, and I feel like I would have been like, oh, I'm okay, I'm just tired. You know, there aren't times I've said that I'm tired just to fucking avoid giving someone a detail about myself. It isn't even funny. You know? But to be fair, my personality has changed a lot from years ago. Like, I was really a shell of a person back when I started secondary school. Like, I had this whole coping mechanism where I just absolutely fucking throw myself into books and scientific studies to try to distract myself from how completely and utterly depressing my lifestyle was. Like, my lifestyle has changed a lot as well. Of course, that does affect my personality. And I've also just really matured and started healing as a person. But I wasn't necessarily a bad person back then. I was just a person who was really struggling. You know? And my time in school for my first 3 years weren't good either. You know? And do you know what? There's a reason too for that. But I feel like that's better left unsaid. You know, but I did get treated like absolute dog shit though, like to keep it fucking free, like, you know. But sure, they're kids. They're still kids, mentally anyway. And I'm just better than them. So, hey, listen, like the last ones that have a huge ego, none of your problems matter anymore. If you genuinely believe you're better than 99.9% of people, you'll be happier. You know? Just don't be too open about it or people will really start disliking you. You know, but hey, it is what it is. Going back to my point. I had this thing where when I got home from school, I would generally just go on my phone and I would just think of philosophy ideas and I would message my best friend And I just like absolutely obsessed with scientific studies. Like I also used my very easy academic work in our first year as a way to like run away from my life. You know, I was like, oh, if I throw myself into a book and if I throw myself into all these research studies and finding out the reason why people work and thinking of these philosophy ideas, and if I just spend all my time looking at like maths figures and scientific figures and just all that, then I just distract myself from my fucking actual life. You know? And it worked. But I was a shell of a person. You know, I was this really fucking timid, quiet kid who wasn't really a person, to be honest with you. But if I told you how I got treated back then you'd be fucking horrified. You know, like, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I was in first year at the time, and this was like my 13th birthday. I actually did tell you this in the previous one. It's my dog Toby, that's the previous video, but I'm just going to give you a brief summary. And the dog had, like, my sister's dog had bit me or whatever, and I'd ran to my mum for her help or whatever. I got the blame. Then she'd left or whatever, and I was left with a bruise on my leg, a scar. It didn't bleed, thank God, and I was left in pain by myself, and I just broke down crying. So I messaged my best friend, and I was like, man, I'm gonna keep it fucking for real. I'm taking my bottle of vodka, and I'm taking my bike, and I'm going cycling, and whatever happens to me, happens to me. Because around this time, even with how young I was, it's gonna sound, I was drinking straight Bacardi like a motherfucker. To keep it on. Whenever a problem happened in my life, I was like, Bacardi. Oh yeah, Bacardi. You know, and alcohol was so readily available in my house for the pure fact my sister, my middle sister, and my mum, they used to drink a lot. You know, and my sister in particular really liked Bacardi. And my mum forced me to drink young. She forced me to drink young. So in a way, she'd nearly be proud that I was using alcohol to numb my feelings. You know? Like, my mother, she was only really happy when I was doing destructive habits. Like, around second year, I'd started going for runs every day and stuff like that. It would personally just fucking get to her. It would really piss her off when I went for these runs. She'd look at my face and like, oh, when I was like dressing my leggings or whatever, and I was going out for the run in my, like, the fields near my house, and that pissed her off, right? But like, if she saw me with like Bacardi or vodka or something like that, she'd say absolutely nothing, but she'd just look at you, and you could feel she wasn't judging you for once, you know, because yours lowers her level, you know, in her eyes or whatever, like. And I think a lot of people back then viewed me as this like really innocent, timid nerd, you know. And I remember on Friday, so like only like 5 days back, I'd talked to this girl in a pub or whatever, and we just started having a conversation, and she knew me back then because same school, and she was like, oh, Nisha, do you vape? And I was like, no. And then she said like, oh, I was going to start talking about like vaping in first year and like woodwork or whatever, but then you were there, so I didn't know how you'd feel about it. And what you got to factor in, right? I think people saw me as this really sheltered kid, this really timid, sheltered nerd or some shit like that. But the reality is, I was surrounded by stuff my whole life. I was surrounded by alcohol. I was forced to make that for my mother. My sister vaped. My middle sister anyway. And I'd started like, I'd experimented with vapes and stuff like that when I was around 14. But I had found them personally very stupid. I didn't really understand the hype behind it, to be honest with you. And I started smoking cigarettes for a tiny bit. But then I had to quit. I stopped myself because I was generally getting addicted. And this was when I was into my running. and stuff like that. And it was affecting my, like, of course it was affecting my lungs, which would not help my running, which I felt very deeply about. So, yeah. I'm, in fact, not a timid nerd. You know? I'm just a fucking intellectual gym girl. You know, and I feel like a lot of the reason why I had the whole intelligent label put on me is purely just because of glasses and stereotypes. I'm low-key a bit of a fucking retard. I'm a self-aware one, you know, but then it's also this thing where it's like, actually stupid people don't realize they're stupid. It takes a level of intelligence to realize they're stupid. Because how I see it is, I don't, like, not everyone hypes on, oh, you're so intelligent, but I've had it said to me, or whatever, and my thing is, I might be a bit more intelligent than the average person, but there is legit maths prodigies out there. There's scientists. There's all these people whose intelligence are bettering society, and there's all these people with so much more profound intelligence than me, that I wouldn't even consider myself intelligent, you know? But then, I don't know if that's right either, because I'd consider myself healthy, but I'm not the healthiest person out there. Like, I'm eating wine gums, but then I also go to the gym regularly. You know? I think a lot of people, back then especially, really misinterpreted who I was, for the pure fact I kind of let nothing on about my personality. But, like, to be honest with you, those people didn't deserve to ever truly see me either. You know? Like, there's a girl or two especially who I actually really did like, because they have a good heart. You know, but like, overall, most of the people that were in my base class at the time, absolute fucking wankers. You know, absolute fucking degeneracy, like, you know. Like, I've said stories to, like, fellas I was chatting to romantically or whatever, about, like, oh yeah, the guys in my year used to do this to me, they said this to me and all that. And multiple of them have, like, offered to, like, beat the living shit out of them. But, like, my thing is, what would I even gain from that? You know? Like, what's happened. You know, they don't speak to me anymore. I vaguely see them in a hallway or two, but, like, they don't matter. You know, like, they mattered so much at the time, and they, like, I went home, and my life was complete and utter torture, and it was really shitty, and then I went into school, and then I was getting slagged, you know, and they made my life more difficult than it had to be, but I wouldn't get them beat up either, you know, like, because my thing is, right, I'm better than that. I wouldn't want to, a big reason on why I act the way I do, I don't want to put myself down to pathetic people's levels, you know. And, like, my thing is, like, when people go, like, bullying other people, when they go slagging other people, it normally comes out of a place of insecurity. You know, a lot of those cunts are stupid. So they're probably just insecure that I was more smarter than them. And to be honest, some of them are dumb as rocks, so, to be honest, they probably should have been a bit insecure about it, you know? Best revenge is doing good with your life. And I'm Nisha Care, so I already know I'm going to do good with my life, you know? And actually, another major change from back then is my self-esteem. I had really, really, really low self-esteem back then. You know, like, I had internalized all the trauma that happened to me, and I had no memories. I'm going to be honest with you, I had walked into my school in first year. I had absolutely no memories. You know, I had the odd one or two, but everything that had happened previously was so traumatic I dissociated, you know. And I didn't have a good experience in primary school either. Maybe institutions just aren't for me. But, yeah. The first and third year weren't the nicest years, but I met my best friend through the base class, so one of my best friends, you know, and she's a big reason why I could put up with all that bullshit, you know, Because I don't know what I'd do if she wasn't there and all those, like, with all those cunts in the year. You know? But, whew, like, I'd switch subjects or whatever. And I was given the choice of switching to art, which is the subject I actually really want to go into. And the only thing is I would have to switch base rooms. So, even with all the slagging, even with all the bullying I faced or whatever, I chose not to for the pure fact I want to stay with my friend, my Sheila. You know? Because, to be fair, when I got home, what was said about me was a lot worse anyway. So, I think it didn't affect me as badly as it probably should have. Because I think I was so used to it. You know? One day in particular, though, like, I was, like, we were in a prefab or whatever, and I was at the back of the class. And one of the main fellas who were absolutely taking the absolute piss out of me, he just went doing this weird shit. And then I just broke down crying because, yeah. And then, like, when I got home, I had an absolute awful doing altogether. You know, because I'd forgot my home ec bag with all my gear. Or what, I don't know if that's a proper term. With all my equipment and materials or whatever. And then I'd message my mum, oh, could you drop it in? And my sister, my middle sister, she's the one who went dropping it in, right? And I said, oh, could you just drop it in reception? Right? And then, what you gotta factor in, my middle sisters make my life absolute living hell at this time. I was around 15. I was around third year at this time. And then she was 20. Right? And she used to absolutely beat the shit on my door. Because I'd lock it and refuse to speak to my mother. Right? Every time I'd put on the immersion to have a warm shower, she'd turn that shit off. She'd eat my food when we were, like, in a scarce fucking... I was in a fucking scarce food situation, and she was making a full-time income, like... She was just doing everything in her power to inconvenience my life. And she had used this home ec bag as a way to really inconvenience my life. Because she knew I was refusing to speak to her as well. I didn't want to speak to her, right? And... And I'd refused to go out to see her, or whatever. And then she basically just then she was like, she sent me this really bitchy message, right? And it was like, what a waste of time, right? And then I remember some of the other messages she used to, like, fucking send me, or whatever. And it was, I didn't even switch off her immersion, I don't think. Anyway, someone switched off her immersion in the house, right? And the immersion is what we use to get hot water. And then she messaged me, did you turn off my fucking immersion? Will you start thinking about other people? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And what you gotta factor in, right? In this household, right? Man, I wasn't even a fucking member in it. I was just there cooped up in my room, you know, looking at my scientific studies, messaging my best friend, and messaging my Sheila, because they were the only really friends I had at the time. And I was there just, like, kind of doing my whole fucking morning routine, you know. I was not a member of the house. Like, how the fuck can you say all this shit about me when I don't speak to you? Fucking madness. And then one time, in third year, especially because the state of the house, there's so much mold and stuff like that, and I kept my room okay as it could be. But all I'm going to say is, that room was handed to me really fucked up. So, I got, like, a coleslaw, right? And then I had a cut underneath the coleslaw. And then the coleslaw got infected. So I was there in so much pain, right? Oh my God. Like, Jesus Christ. It was brutal. It was fucking brutal. Or whatever, right? I'd refused to go to my mother to get me to go to the doctor. I refused. I was like, listen, if I have to die because of this fucking infection, I'll die because of the infection, you know. I didn't give a fuck, you know. And I was crying in pain. And I'll actually always be grateful for this. My autistic sister, she had got, like, a Lucozade bottle. And she'd made a whole bag of things to make me feel better, you know? And then she'd rang my mum and be like, Nisha's in a lot of pain, please take her to the doctors. You know? And sometimes it kills me how good of a heart that she has. You know? And there's nothing I can do to save her. You know? And or whatever, right? And then my mum had took me to the doctors or whatever, and I was given antibiotics and creams and stuff like that to try to deal with the infected cold sore. It hurt like a motherfucker. Like, I don't know what fucking infection I had, but that bitch hurt. Like, I could put a photo or two up or something like that, but like, it was a brutal fucking infection. Like, my fucking lips were swollen and everything. And I had gone to the bathroom and I'd locked the bathroom door. And I was in there for a minute and I started applying the creams. My middle sister had started beating the shit out the door. And when I say she was beating the shit out the door, as in like, I think she was getting fucking bruised by the way she was punching the fucking doors I was in. Or whatever. And then my mum and her just laughed. And she just walked away. You know? And I was like, even with the amount of pain of the cold sore I was in, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to show up to school. You know? Was even though I got treated like shit at school, I got treated worse at home. You know? I was trying to be the most logical about it, and not a lot was, I didn't really have a lot going for me back then, to be honest with you. And not a lot of people could have understood me back then, because I wouldn't have given them the chance to. You know, and also, I think a lot of people don't realise the severity of how bad my life used to be, because I wouldn't show it, you know. I wouldn't talk a lot to a lot of people, like, I wouldn't talk a lot to people I don't know like that, especially, but there was definitely signs, you know. Like, every time that something dropped in the classroom, the fucking flinching I do is crazy. To be honest, I still flinch like that. I don't flinch as severely, but I still do have a huge reaction when I hear some sound. You know? And I'm happy I'm happy those kids didn't realise how fucked up my home life was. Because I feel like they would have used it against me, low-key. You know? Like, I don't know what the fuck was going on in their lives to make them so fucking mean. But it is what it is. You know? I'm over it, like. You know? Plus, if I wanted them beat up, they'd be fucking beat up by now. You know? Like, there's like the main guy who did in particular. Whatever. And with him, he's a very confusing individual. I don't even necessarily dislike him. His motives behind the shit he was doing, looking back on it, very questionable. I think it almost nearly seemed like he wanted to be my friend. He just went about it in a really, really weird way. But do you know what? Immaturity, I don't fucking know. Hey, low-key, especially back then, all someone had to do to actually get into my life was like, oh my god, Nisha, I listened to the House of Balloons. I love The Weeknd. Oh my god. Do you want to do science projects together? In your free time, like a fucking nerd? That's all someone had to do to get into my life, like, low-key. He was just, I don't know, yeah. I actually don't, looking back on it, he low-key traumatized the shit out of me. But I don't hate him. Right? I don't know, because, in my school or whatever, right, I was at the water fountain, and I was just there doing that. And he was the one in front of me in the water fountain, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I recognize this individual. Yeah, I do know who this is. And he was done there. He was getting his books or whatever. A guy had tried to fucking beat me in the line. I'd like manhandled him, got him out the way, and I was like, I've been waiting for water for the past 2 fucking hours. I was not having it. Don't listen, I need my liters of water and I need my caffeine. That's some shit you don't fuck around with me about. And I went filling it. And then he was like, oh, how are you, Nisha? And I was like, yeah, you know, I'm fine. You know, it's been ages since I've spoke to you. And then he was like, oh, yeah, that's because you skipped TY. Japan traveling. And I was like, hopefully, yeah. And we kind of just went on with our days. And I was like, it's crazy how people who used to have such a big impact on your lives can just become strangers. I don't know. I feel like when I go through more therapy, in around 2 years' time, I can tell the verdict on whether he was like a misunderstood, like he was a fucking someone with good intentions who just went about him the wrong way, or someone I should just dislike for the rest of my life. You know? But hey, listen. That's for my mental dilemmas in the future, not right now. Yeah. Well, not a lot of people realize I have 2 sides of me, right? I call it the pit bull and the golden retriever, right? I can be a very serious, moody cunt to a lot of people, you know, and I will be honest about that. And sometimes I'll do an action and I'm like, why the fuck was I so just kind of like get out of my face? You know, like I don't like talking to a lot of people or whatever. But like sometimes I feel like I am way too cold around some people. But at the same time, they probably fucking deserve them. And then other times I can be like the absolute friendliest person anyone could ever meet. You know? And it kind of just all depends on what side I want to show people. But like low-key, if I don't like someone, I'm just a fucking mute. Like why should I even waste my energy to like open my mouth and say a couple of words to you? You're wasting my fucking time. You know, that's how I view it. Like if I make the conscious choice not to speak to someone, I have a good reason for it. You know? And like my thing is, you will never find someone better than me at avoiding to have conversations with people. Or just being the driest, most absolute kind of dead inside cunt when I'm getting spoken to by someone I don't want to speak to. Right? But I don't know. Because my thing is I absolutely avoided speaking to my mother. Like my life absolutely depended on it. And that was a big survival tactic I had. Also, I don't know if this is a sign of autism or not, but every time I eat like coloured sweets, I have to do them in colours. Like I'll just show you the green wine gums, for example, right? I've just split them up like that to greens, and then there's orange, and then there's, and like I only typically eat them in order of colour, and that's just a fun fact about me, right? But if I do not speak a lot when I'm talking to someone, that is because I've decided that they're evil and I don't want to speak to them. Yeah. Well, to be fair to a lot of people, I am a very hard person to actually get to open up, so now I've decided to melt the wine gum to see what happens. But of course there is going to be a lot of misinterpretations about someone like me just for the pure fact I don't open up. You know, I feel like, and also, especially back then, I was an absolute ghost on social media, so people couldn't even check my reposts or anything to find out any interest in me or find any photos of me. I was like a live ghost. I've actually had this said to me to someone before about this. Nisha, if you didn't go to the school, I wouldn't know you exist. Honestly, I kind of heard it and I was like, in a way, I was like weirdly like, thank you. You know? I don't know, so many people are shallow and so many people are doing the wrong things with their life. Why would I want them to know who I am? It's also kind of weird because now I'm regularly uploading on YouTube and have like nearly 2,000 subscribers. And I have like hundreds of people watching my videos. You know? Fun fact. I had a video with 100,000 views, but I took it down because I didn't like how many views it had. Fun fact. You know? Happiness is always key over everything. Fucking numbers, figures, and analytics. They're just numbers on the screen at the end of the day. I'm grateful for the subscribers I have. I'm grateful for the views. But they're not necessarily the most important thing when it comes to this channel, in my opinion. You know? And a lot of people either think I'm a really nice person or I'm an absolute cunt. No in between, really. But people always notice me. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know. A lot of people notice me because they want to make fun of me. But that's kind of failing for them now. Honestly, I swear to God, next person who says a fucking... Next male who says a slight comment, they're actually getting pegged. Honestly, I'm just going to threaten to peg them. And you know what, if they try saying another comment, I'll actually fucking do it. I'm a woman. I'll legally get away with that shit. Oh, that's all I'm saying. I'll get away with it. You know, they're going to look at me, you know, after the police report, and they're going to be like, oh, look at this very happy looking young one. She would never do such a thing. And then I did. And I hope I traumatized them. Yeah. Hey, listen. There's always jokes to be made, even inappropriate ones. Right? Now I'm stacking the wine gums because I'm bored and I lack stimulation right now. Yeah. Also, please ignore the half-naked woman up there. It was 15 cents off Shein and I wanted some decor. You know? Plus, pornography is basically normalized in society anyway. And everything's hypersexual. So, enjoy seeing the naked woman up there. Well, roughly naked. Overall, I don't necessarily regret how I've been misinterpreted. Because if people fully understood me, I think a lot more people would want to be in my life. And I don't like people like that. You know, how I see it is, if people get the wrong interpretation of me, and they don't want to be in my life because of that, then that's a blessing. You know, because, see, the thing is, I feel like I have had rumors spread about me and stuff like that, but, like, the thing is, if people will listen to one side of the story and take it as the gospel and all this, they're low-key a fucking idiot. You know? Like, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know gossip. I know, like, nothing about what happens around the school. You know? I'll hear the odd time, oh, I remember, like, a year ago, I heard the odd time, oh, yeah, this person shagged each other, and I was like, I didn't want to know that, but okay. I was like, internally speaking, I was like, I hope they put a cap on the bottle, but okay, I did not want to know that. Because my thing is, like, if you're easy to interpret, I think that's a bad thing. I'm just, like, such a complex onion out here. I'm like an onion with all the layers. Like a traumatized onion. A bashed up onion. I'm just an onion, dude. You get it? It's a metaphor because onions have a lot of layers. I'm actually autistic. But that's okay. If only the government would pay me for it, though. Maybe I need to just go like, oh, and get, like, paid for some shit. And also, a lot of people can probably call me an ableist because of that. But, listen, I definitely do actually am neurodivergent in some way, definitely. But a lot of people who would be getting offended by that probably actually don't suffer from severe autism or Down syndrome. And let's keep it very honest, I probably do treat said people a lot better than you would. You know, because all I'm going to say is, right, when people go on this whole thing, oh, you can't say that about black people, oh, you can't say that about, like, just, like, mentally disabled people, they are the people who are absolutely infantilizing these people. You know, I do think it is inherently disrespectful to push your beliefs about a certain group of people onto everyone else. You know? Like, not, you know? My thing is, I feel like a lot of these people who get really offended by like jokes and stuff like that, and just how people reward something that isn't ideal or the most socially acceptable, they're the people who come from privileged backgrounds who actually don't face discrimination because they're not a part of the group. You know? Like, listen, if I say something that's a bit off, and someone actually with a mental disability was like, Nisha, that made me feel uncomfortable, I'd be like, oh, fuck, I'm actually really sorry. Won't say that again. You know, if I say something that's a bit racist, and someone from that group is like, what the fuck, dude? I'll be like, okay, yeah, won't say that again. You know? But, yeah, that's a misinterpretation. Some people probably think I'm a fucking ableist cunt. Which I'm absolutely not. Because I love my sister very dearly who has autism. You know? And I feel like some people with like autism, Down syndrome, honestly, they're some of the most lovely people you'll ever meet. You know, Down syndromes especially get a lot of slagging. But, Loki, I've never seen like an unhappy Down syndrome kid, Loki. It's like kind of like the root of, it's like the key to happiness. Be stupid. Yeah. Maybe that's why all these like fucking hyper intelligent maths prodigies have absolutely no social skills. Maybe there's like a key to it. Yeah. Also, I'm not smart in the whole maths department or science department. I just use hyper focus on it. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I was there learning chemistry in my free time when I was like 13. You know? You've never catch me doing that shit down, and I fucking hope. You know? My interests have changed. You know? Like, I feel like I'm very big into the gym. I feel like that's a safe statement to make. And I've always had a thing for music, but I used to listen to a lot of self-improvement podcasts back then. Not like the whole, Fresh and Fit, Jesus Christ, I was never that cringe, right? But I used to listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, but you also have to factor in that was old Joe Rogan. So, yeah, before he became a sellout, you know. And I have a big reason why my personality has changed is because I've actually reconnected with who I actually am. A lot of my memories have come back, and that has led to me developing an actual personality, which is something I'm very grateful for. Because I'm really happy with the person I am, you know. I'm not saying I'm the best person ever. I feel like it sometimes. I'm not necessarily, though. But that's okay, you know. Like, a lot of people don't understand me. But, do you know what? It is what it is. You know? It's all about the people who will take the time to get to know you. You know? I have 2 people in my life who mean the absolute world to me. I have my chosen family, and I have my close cousin. So that's all I really need. You know, if another person or 2 wants to join the whole fucking gang of, oh my god, in this world full of insane people, you're low-key sane, I low-key like speaking to you, and what, are you socially ostracized for being quote-unquote weird in this country? Be my friend! Yeah. I know. It's weird how life works. You know? Being weird is viewed as almost like an insult in especially Ireland, especially the rural parts of Ireland, but I feel it as a really positive thing. Within reason, like, if you're weird because you want to go fuck kids, get the fuck away from me, or like, fuck cats, just some shit, like, no, that's not good weird. You know, but like, kind of like quirky being a bit different, I view that as a good thing. You know? When everyone's the same, it's boring. You know? A lot of people here wear the same clothes, and I don't necessarily care about that type of thing, because I do think clothes are a form of self-expression, or whatnot, but I also don't really give a fuck. That, like, I don't think they mean that much to her personality either. They're an indication, but they're not a huge one, whatever. But I think a lot of people act the same, and a lot of people have the same kind of focuses in life. And I feel like a lot of people, it's not that they're necessarily like born with all the same personality. I think it's a thing where it's like they suppress the traits that make them weird. Like, I'm a fucking nutcase, low key. But I've never suppressed it. I've always genuinely just been myself, to the best of my abilities, especially with all the trauma and stuff like that. But I've never felt the need to try to change my personality, even though that has left me to be like socially ostracized for years. That's okay. I'd rather be loved by very few for being who I actually am than by being loved by many for having a mask. I don't view the point in that. What's the point of having people who like me if they like me for something that isn't completely myself? I'm the type of person, I want to die with absolutely no regrets. And I'd regret if I had been socially pressured into conforming. And to be honest with you, a lot of the people who do judge me and a lot of people who do view me as weird, their opinion doesn't hold a lot of weight to me. Of course, like, the odd comment or two would get to you. Like, I don't really get comments anymore or stuff like that. But a lot of the people who did slag me before, whatever, they were very arrogant in thinking that they meant anything to me. Their opinion meant anything to me. Like, when I think back on it, I could nearly laugh. Because I'm borderline better than them at everything. I know that does sound egotistical. But, like, my thing is, especially with men who've tried, like, slagging me or whatever, my thing is, like, I have bigger balls. Like, I have bigger balls than you did. Like, because a lot of these quote-unquote masculine teenage boys or whatever, if they had survived the abuse I've gone through, they wouldn't be here. And I feel like that is a level of arrogance I do carry around. Where it's like, listen, you can say whatever the fuck you want about me, but you cannot survive the bullshit I've been through. And I know damn well, if a lot of these guys who used to make fun of me, if they had experienced even a quarter, even an eighth of the trauma I've experienced and the treatment I've faced my whole life, they would absolutely crumble. Because these are the same people who are insecure, but also have parents they can rely on. A lot of these guys, they're insecure or whatever, but they can always go crying to mommy and daddy. They always had food on the table. They do not know the levels of struggle I've experienced my whole life. And if they knew the levels of struggle I experienced my whole life, they'd have an identity crisis. And it's the type of thing where it's like, even with the amount of trouble and pain and trauma I've been through, I've never put it outward onto other people. I've always internalized it, Sometimes I can be cold and sometimes I can be a bit of a dickhead, but I'm not openly going out of my way to do that. Like, a lot of these people, somehow their personalities are worse than me, and somehow they're doing less with their life, even though they've been given such a better dick. And I don't understand how that happens. I would be fucking unstoppable if I had two parents who loved me. Like, I'm already destined for greatness, even with how shitty my deck was. And a lot of people say my self-belief is narcissistic, but if I have to be narcissistic to make my dreams happen, so be it. It's how, if it happens, is when it happens. I don't care the lengths I have to go to. I don't care how little I have to sleep. I don't care how much work I have to put in. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care if I succeed just before my fucking deathbed. I'm going to succeed in whatever with like whatever path in life I want to succeed in. You know, because all our levels, all our desires for success are different. You know, some people could be like, I want to be the best golf player in the world. Other people could be like, I want to be fucking I want to be a powerlifter. I want to be the best powerlifter. Other people be like, I just want to be the best mother. And other people be like, as long as I just die with a bit of happiness and a bit of family, I'm happy out. You know? And I want to die with everything I want. I don't want superficial things. I want to make sure the people I love are absolutely taken care of. I want to make sure that I give a lot of kids who came from bad situations a new opportunity at life. I want to take in a lot of foster kids, you know, and I would love to be successful enough to give to like women's charities, children's charities, and just make sure do good. I want to do a lot of good. You know, I want to be a source of inspiration, and I want to be a light source to people who are on the verge of taking their lives, or who will never think that they'll ever have a ounce of happiness in their life. And this is more superficial stuff. I want to just get a fuck ton of tattoos. I want to have a motorbike. I want to be absolutely jacked as fuck. And I want to have the independence of my free time. I want the type of career path where I can just work online and have the freedom of being my own boss. You know? And if the whole social media thing doesn't work out, I'm going into the insurance industry anyway. But I hope this works out. But do you know what? If it doesn't, something else in my life will work out because I'm niche care. Keep it honest. You know? Never catch me with OnlyFans out here. Never. Fuck that shit. Hey, listen. I'd rather kill myself, to be honest with you. Controversial take, though, now that if your nudes have been leaked multiple times, just start selling. Controversial take, but you know, you might as well profit on it. You might as well profit. You know, if everyone you've already known in your personal life has already seen them, you might as well low key. Yeah, don't be caught out though. Don't do that yourself, just for your mental sake. Low key. Yeah. I think I'm gonna die successful. Maybe not most typical people's definition of success. You know, I don't see how having a nice house and expensive car will do anything for me. You know, I think stuff like that is superficial, but I think like the stuff that actually will make me happy when I die is, yeah, my whole bloodline of my kids and all the kids I've taken in, after I die, they're gonna be better off for having known me. You know, like, I would have been better off if I was an orphan. I didn't know my parents, you know, and I want the opposite of that legacy. You know? But then, when I die, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to really miss me. And that also does scare me. You know? Like, even with how my mental health does, like, go down sometimes and kind of spikes up again, then goes down and stuff like that, I do know some people are going to really miss me when I die. And I feel like that's a big reason why I never killed myself. To be honest with you, I've always had someone that told me not to do it. And you know what? I love them enough not to do it. To keep it very, very honest with you. And maybe that's what a lot of people don't understand about me. I honestly, even with how I can have a lot of trust issues, even with how I'm not good at opening up, all I really want to do is just love someone with everything. You know? But it scares me to do that. So it just takes someone with a lot of time, persistence, and trying hard that will get me to that point. You know? But how I nearly view myself as a swan, you know? Kind of like one partner for life. When the partner dies, the other swan dies. It's just depressed before they die. You know? I don't know. I love people so much. If they were depressed and didn't have the motivation to shower, I'd shower them for them. Like, I'd fuck them into the shower and be like, I'm fucking washing you now, deal with it. You know? But there's a certain level of irony. I'm so willing to give love and acts of services and all this, but I'd want someone to put me down if I became dependent on anyone else. If I ever had gotten into a car accident and I was paralyzed from like the neck down, I would generally beg someone to kill me. But then the problem is they'd probably get a manslaughter charge, so my biggest fear in life is being dependent on others. So if I'm at the end of my life and I need a full-time carer and I need all this, I probably will end up killing myself. I feel like that's a big reason why I take my health so seriously, because I want to live a long life, but I don't ever want to be dependent on anyone else. Like, I'll open up to people, I'll cry to people, but the whole like relying on people thing, that freaks me out. You know? Like, but I feel like if someone has, like, if someone watched, well, preferably no one fucking stalked me out here, but if someone had like hyper analyzed my behavior, it would have been like, there is signs, you know. But other people are just too focused on their own life, which is completely understandable, to be honest. You know, like, I didn't exactly want someone to be at the back of my class with a fucking, you know, going like binoculars, going like, what's she doing? Oh my god, she flinched. This is a sign that she's traumatized. Yeah, I didn't really want anyone to be fucking doing that. Think that's a safe enough statement, but yeah. But I feel like a lot of people have made narratives about me in their head. That like, oh, I'm an evil piece of shit, or oh, I'm this and I'm that, but they're just wrong. You know, but then you also have to factor in a lot of people that do have different interpretations of you throughout their life. I've definitely been the worst person in some people's eyes, and I've definitely been the best, most kindest person in other people's eyes. You know? Like, this is actually something that kind of stuck to me. Apparently, I'd really negatively impacted this one girl's life through a joke of mine. And this whole joke was I'm just refusing to sit beside her. But I was taking the piss, like, I still did view her as a friend. Whatever. And then she told me, like, 2 years later, I absolutely hated you for this, and I thought you were a bitch and all this, and over this one joke. You know? And that had, like, really apparently negatively impacted her at the time. Apparently she was struggling at the time or whatever. But, like, low-key, it couldn't have been that deep. Like, sometimes I have done a thing or two, or said a thing or two, and I actually look back and I actually feel a bit of shame about it, and I kind of do regret doing it. And to those people that I have affected during those instances, I will say sorry, of course. But I don't know, like, she was harping on about, like, how she was struggling at the time. Of course, I feel bad that she was struggling at the time. But she was like, you refused to sit beside me. And, do you know what? I was alone. I felt lonely at this time. And then you did this. And it really affected me. And all this. And I was like, are you directing these feelings towards me when they shouldn't be directed towards me? Like, you could have been like, oh yeah, Nisha, you're a cunt. But, like, I don't think sitting alone can ever affect someone that deeply. Man, I was like saying, the whole of COVID-19, I don't think I talked to a single soul. Like, I'm yes, the whole of COVID-19, right? I just got abused by my mother. And she'd only, like, speak to me if she was, like, chucking me out the house, or, like, yelling at me, or, like, going to hit me, or like, refusing to feed me. That was, like, the only good, like, that was the only, not good at all, but that was, like, the only fucking contact with a human I had the whole of COVID-19. That definitely did affect me. But sure, like, I fucking lived through that, and I wasn't that deeply affected by that either, like, I don't know, some people are fucking... Yeah. Hey, listen. I can be a dickhead in some people's eyes. Some are justified though, and some aren't. Low key. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like some people, I don't know, some people are just fucking weird like that. You know? Hey, listen, some stuff just can't be that deep, man. You know, like, I'm always like, sometimes this isn't anyone from my personal, but they're like, it affected me so deeply that my mother bought me the wrong colour car. And I was like, life is not that deep. It's not that deep. You know, like, sometimes, oh lord. Oh, I'm getting flashbacks about someone who I don't want to get flashbacks about someone. You know, and like one time I'd said to someone, because they were telling me some stupid shit that apparently really affected them. I was like, it's not that deep. And then she was like, how dare you say that to me? It is. Don't say that to me again. And I was like, I don't know. Some people are in some type of weird timing. I don't know. But maybe it's a good thing that these people don't understand me. Low-key, because I know most people are just on complete and utter bullshit, you know? And especially in secondary school, I feel like something about secondary school just absolutely feeds into some, like, demon where it's like, these kids need to be dickheads, you know? And, like, I can be a moody cunt sometimes, like, honestly, I definitely can be, you know? But some people, it just doesn't hurt to be kind, you know? Like, it really can't hurt to be kind like that, you know? But, like, I definitely have really changed as a person, so I feel like a lot of people who knew me a couple of years ago, they would hold on to the old version, the old perception that they had of me, of being this, like, really timid, quiet nerd who people thought was really sheltered altogether. But the reality is, I was there fucking making alcohol, fucking... Ginny, I was there like 12 years old going into fucking secondary school. And I was there, I could legit send on my shopping list to my mum and I'd be like, Bacardi, bottle of Bacardi, vodka, YKD, Smirnoff Ice raspberry. You know, like, my mum would legit fucking go into the shop and buy a vape for me. You know? Like, I never got her to do that because... low-key, vapes are cringe, dude. Keep it as, you know, don't... Hey, listen, I ain't gonna judge anyone for being addicted to nicotine. You know? Hey, listen, some people I do like, they actually are absolute fucking fiends for some... I don't know the flavours, but fucking... yeah, I don't even know the brands, really. But... hey, listen, don't be doing that shit. If you can avoid it, that is. You know, but... and now I'm trying to make a human being out of these wine gums. Yeah. Yeah. Low-key. But what I will say is, I don't regret how a lot of people interpreted me or misinterpreted me. I don't regret it necessarily. You know, I don't know. There's some people who, like, weirdly really disliked me back then, even though I was, like, so timid and to myself. But a lot of people are fucking freaks anyway, so. And when I say freaks, I don't mean weird. I'm more saying that people, if someone could take someone as timid as me who wanted just to be left alone, and if they can create a problem with me, on me as an individual, especially back then, I can semi-understand if someone could dislike me now. I can't get that. But back then, I was just like this really timid child who, like, wanted to be left alone, who just, like, did her science at home and just messaged her, like, one actual friend who, like, barely spoke or did anything. And if you managed to get to cause a problem with me, not fight me or anything, but if you, like, were angered by my existence back then, you're just a fucking weird, man. You know? Like, I don't know, I think about myself back then, I was such a cute kid, man. Like, As in, I would have gone the extra mile for people back then. You know, there's something so blissfully naive. You know, I was just getting hurt all the time, but if someone had asked me for help, I would have went the extra mile to help them. You know, I remember one time, a girl of mine had messaged me, oh, could you help me with the business homework? I don't know how to do it. And then my mum had a degree in business. And then I'd asked her for help and she couldn't do it. And it was like absolute... I don't even want to talk about what happened. I don't want to talk about what happened. But I'd gone that extra mile to try to get help for the girl who needed business homework. And I had got abused really badly for it. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. I might end up crying when I stop recording this and when I upload it. But you know what? It's okay. Either way, you're gonna get a lot longer videos now. The first, like, actual podcast style, Miss Spaghetti really loves you, aka Nisha Gary, and bye-bye. I don't know why you've watched me for this long, but an hour and a minute and 5 seconds. Bye-bye.